My name is Paul Moorhead and I'm a licensed insolvency practitioner. My firm is called Moorhead Savage. Insolvency practitioner is an individual who helps businesses and individuals to overcome their financial difficulties. More and more we like to try and refer to ourselves as business and financial turnaround and rescue and recovery practitioners rather than using the word insolvency. So I think insolvency is possibly unhelpful. It suggests that all we're there to do is to be company undertakers and business undertakers, burying businesses which are no longer able to carry on functioning. But our real role is to try and make sure that where possible we can rescue and recover and rehabilitate businesses where they do have a real future. To properly undertake this role, you need to make sure that the individual you're dealing with is properly qualified, properly authorised, and to ensure that that's the case, a system of licensing was brought in about 25 years ago now. So all practitioners who are able to undertake all the different procedures under the Insolvency Act, the slightly scary bit of legislation which gives us the powers that we've got, you have to be licensed. And so I'm one of those licensed individuals. The business deals with both individuals and companies. I have a wide range of experience dealing with individuals, both sole traders, people running their own businesses who have found themselves in financial difficulties, and also what you might call consumer debtors, people who have run up unsustainable debts on credit cards or loans, other unsecured borrowing, which they find that for whatever reason they can't afford to repay. I think, as I said before, a lot of people are scared of the term insolvency and scared or very apprehensive about what an insolvency practitioner might suggest if they ever meet up with one. And so my message is really that insolvency practitioners, if they are properly fulfilling the role which we have, they're out there looking for opportunities to turn the situation around, because usually it's in everyone's interest for a business to carry on going or for somebody to avoid going bankrupt. And so where possible we always try and look at ways of turning the situation around in order to benefit both the creditors, who of course have a strong interest in making sure that they get as much of a return as possible out of the situation, but also all the other stakeholders that might be around the edges. For example, the business owner of course usually wants to make sure their business continues. If there are any employees involved, and of course they will be very keen to try and make sure that they remain in employment. And it may well be that there are customers and suppliers who rely on that business for whatever the product or service that they produce, and so it'll be an important part of their chain, their network, to keep a business going as well. I certainly come across all the time people who perhaps have come to me slightly too late, or certainly have come to me later than I would have liked them to have done. The general rule is the sooner that somebody seeks assistance, the more options there will be available. And so the sooner that someone does come looking for help, when it's obvious that there are financial difficulties, the sooner somebody says, okay, I think there is a problem here, I'd like just a bit of advice, I'd like to have a chat with somebody just to kick around what the issues are. Of course, every situation is different. There can be no one-size-fits-all solution to any financial difficulty. The key thing is always approaching somebody who has the right skills and the right experience to be able to outline all the options which are available. And as I say, the sooner that someone like myself gets involved in the process, the more options there are likely to be available. What we always say is that if anybody is finding themselves in financial difficulties, whether they're a private individual, a salaried individual who's found themselves overcommitted on credit cards or on loans, whether they are a sole trader who's finding their business has run into difficulties, whether they're a director of a limited company or a partner in a partnership, we're very happy to initially hold an initial consultation with people with no obligation and completely free of charge, at a convenient location at a time that suits everybody, where we can simply get to grips with what the issues are, we can have an honest and open discussion about what the options are, and then we can from there hopefully guide the individual in the right direction. And of course it's up to them whether or not they wish to take our advice, but we certainly offer the initial advice free of charge and without obligation. The role of an insolvency practitioner tends to evolve during a relationship with any individual, but certainly when we're first asked to get involved, we have a duty to make sure that we get to grips with exactly what the situation is, that we find out all the facts. So we do rely on people being open and honest with us so that we can know exactly how the land lies. And once we know what the situation is in detail, we can then give completely impartial advice, which of course is completely confidential between ourselves and the individual concerned. If then the individual decides that they want to instruct us to go forward, then of course we start looking at what the best procedure is and how best we can suit both their needs, but also balancing the needs of the other stakeholders involved, like creditors, like employees, and other people who have a financial interest in the outcome of the case. Yeah, at the moment, in the current economic circumstances, more and more people and companies are finding themselves in difficulty, and so more people are entering into formal insolvency procedures. So you may have seen headlines recently saying that the number of people who are either going bankrupt or who are going into an individual voluntary arrangement, an IVA, have both increased quite rapidly in recent months. The number of companies who are finding themselves in difficulties has also increased, although that's slightly plateaued for now. So the number of companies going into liquidation has risen to a much higher level than it was in previous years, but has now stabilised. Because of the number of individuals and businesses that are now finding themselves in difficulty, we have seen an explosion in the number of debt advisors, debt counsellors, debt management experts, a whole range of people giving themselves slightly different titles. All I would say to people is, be aware of the fact that if you want to access the various help which is available under the Insolvency Act, under this slightly scary bit of legislation which is there to try and help, you need to make sure that you are talking to a licensed insolvency practitioner and not merely to perhaps a salesperson for another organisation who can't really advise you properly and who will only sell your details to effectively somebody like myself who will then actually roll their sleeves up and get involved in helping the situation. So all I'd say is, be very careful about who you approach and who you instruct to help you, because unless they are a licensed insolvency practitioner, you may be paying for unreliable advice, and you may actually be doubling the amount of money which you have to pay out, because an insolvency practitioner like myself wouldn't charge fees simply to introduce you to somebody else. Of course, if you come to me direct, then of course we can start the process of helping straight away. Well, if people want to go and have a look at us for a bit more information, we have a website which is at www.moorheadsavage.co.uk, or they can phone us. Our phone number is 01709 331 300.